All right, hi guys. I'm Nasu from the Fairy Tale Podcast, and we're here with
Timothy Zahn, author of Star Wars books, Terminator books, and original stuff as well.
And Sherry Priest. I have had more than a dozen books published, several different companies, several different universes. But anytime anyone says, "I've read your book," they mean Bone Shaker. So I'm best known as a steampunk author, but I also do a lot of gothic horror.
now. For both of you, what is the initial concept from getting the ideas in your head and slowly putting them down on paper or computer or however you do it? Like, what's the process of taking what's in your imagination and actually putting it down in writing? Is there? I mean, aside from just writing it, is it just there in your head and then it just kind of flows out, or is there more of a I have to wait. Okay, let's see how I can arrange this in order and stuff like that.
I outline first.
Yeah.
So I work out the storyline, the details, where I'm starting, where I'm ending, who the major characters are, any of the little plot points along the way, side plot, story arcs if I think of them at the time. So I have an organization, and then I start writing, which often will deviate somewhat from the original outline, but it'll get me where I was originally planning to go.
Yeah, I think there's not one right way to do it. I know a lot of people who do it. I have a friend who likes to joke that she has 3 times the content for her outlines and whatever actually makes it into the project. I'm more of a seat of the pants. I usually know the beginning. I often know the middle, and I figure out the end on the way. But I do mini outlines. I have a legal pad size notebook on a clipboard, and I'll do like, well, in this chapter or 2, I got to make sure these things happen. And then if I hit a wall, I sit down with the legal pad again, and I'm like, all right, what do I need for the next couple chapters? So I don't like outlining. I don't like doing synopses. That was always my least favorite part of querying, and it was my least favorite part of taking this gig with this other publisher that is an in-house thing that I'm doing, because I was pitching for it. Like, give us some sample content and some an outline and a synopsis, and I'm like, oh god, I'm terrible at it. I hate doing it.
It's often said there are architects and there are gardeners. The architects are the ones building the story or the book. The gardeners are the ones just letting it grow along the way. A lot of us, it sounds like you and I are similar in the sense we architect part of the greenhouse, see where it's growing, and build the next part of the greenhouse. You're doing it by chapters.
Right,
I'm kind of doing it. Yeah, exactly.
I stumbled across the same thing myself when I started just writing kind of, I mean, it sounds cliche compared to published authors, but when I started writing a fan fiction when I was 16, and they didn't even have the term fan fiction back then.
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
even want to see my G.I. Joe and My Little Pony stuff from the 80s.
Oh, I've got, see, I'm a guy that started writing Sailor Moon.
No, not
good.
together.
I'm a guy that started writing Sailor Moon fan fiction, so. And at this point in time, nobody knew what S and Super S and all that other stuff was, but I started just kind of writing it, and then when I got to the ending, and I sat back and I reread everything from start to finish, I was like, nothing in the beginning, and only half of the stuff in the middle actually makes sense with the ending. And the ending is the best part. And of course, that's the climax. That's where everything kind of builds into, well, musically it would be a crescendo.
Well, as Christy says, there are many different ways to do it, and even we don't do it always the same way.
Right.
There's just the right way to write this one book, and the next book may require something else.
Now,
you may start with a character, you may start with
Yeah.
a plot point, you may start with the ending and work backwards.
Yeah.
And I've often found that, typically speaking, I lose about 20,000 words off the front of whatever. It takes me that long to figure out where my actual starting point is. So, which is good and bad, because when you do find the actual starting point, but then you're like, oh crap, now I'm back to square one. But now I know where to go from here. Because I kind of flail around a lot in the beginning sometimes, trying to figure out exactly, like, at what point does the story actually begin? When do I quit treading water and start moving forward? But
Now, what is kind of, you came into with Star Wars an already established storyline with Star Wars itself, and then after you had come in and laid down the kind of groundwork for the expanded universe, and you're coming back in with the Thrawn duology and so many different books, and then you're coming in with the origin story of Outbound Flight. Like, how much research does that require? Do you have to look at what other people have done that's taken place beforehand, or like when you're going back and doing prequels, do you have to know about storyline in certain games or comics that may have preceded it, or obviously know some of the events that take place later now that they've got further on into the story? How does that work for a series like Star Wars, where there's so much content all over the place?
You do what you can to keep it in continuity with everything else. For the Hand of Thrawn duology, I had a group of friends called the Bothan Spies. Since the books were not being written chronologically, the series just before the Hand of Thrawn was the Black Fleet Crisis.
Yes.
So I sent out some emails to friends. Tell me what Lando is doing in the Black Fleet Crisis. So, or Luke or Leia or whatever. And then I would get a 2 or 3 page summary back of this is what they did, this is where they ended that, so this is my starting spot. For Outbound Flight, we'd had, originally it was set to come out before Attack of the Clones, which is where it is chronologically, and then they postponed it until after the final movie. The advantage of that was that I got to see all of the ships that they designed for Attack of the Clones, all the vehicles and such. I could get the specs and diagrams and such and incorporate those into the book. I did not try to keep up with whatever games were doing at that point. Fortunately, by that time, Lucasfilm had gotten into their own stride of having the holocron that was their continuity check that was continually being updated with everything happening in the
guide to the Star Wars universe stuff.
Movies, books, comics,
and
indie games.
Yeah.
Wikipedia started after that, and there's a guy, Leland Shee, who's the keeper of the holocron, who keeps the holocron up to date and has a phenomenal memory for Star Wars stuff in his own right.
So just remember, fans of the duology, many Bothans died.
Many Bothans spent hours of their evening sorting this stuff out.
Many Bothans' lives, social lives, died
Yeah.
to make this book.
Many Bothans had to explain to their spouses what they were doing on the computer again so long and rereading these books. But you can't keep track of everything. You hope at this point that, well, Lucasfilm's very good about that now.
Yeah.
They were less so in the early days when they were caught by surprise by all this as well. You have worked with George R.R. Martin, and he's got the same encyclopedic knowledge.
Oh, yeah. Good Lord. Him and 2 or 3 of the old guard, off the top of their heads, when you go to use a character, like, hey, in this plot line, we need somebody who, 20 years ago, did this one thing. What about this character? And one of them will be like, no, that guy was in Rome back then.
This is the wild card stuff.
And the wild card stuff, yeah. And, no, that guy was over. No, he was dead by then. He was dead by 85, so you can't use him. And there's 30 years and nearly as many books, and it's an awful lot to hold in any one head. But especially when you have 2 or 3 people, they kind of bounce off each other a little bit and be like, oh, wait, no, I remember because it was the one with this and that. And you end up with a good form of collective knowledge for it, where even if one guy doesn't know, it knows who to ask, and he knows this other chick who knows the other thing, and then between them you can kind of get the big picture.
So, also in the original Thrawn trilogy, the original book trilogy, because now we're in when we talk about the expanded universe, I always consider Thrawn to be the original trilogy as far as the expanded universe goes. You have the original trilogy in movies, but this is the original trilogy for the books and the expanded universe.
Though at the time they called it a story cycle.
A story cycle.
Yes.
Book
3 of its 3-book story cycle, because apparently Lucasfilm didn't want them to use the word trilogy. We're not sure why.
So
Because of reasons.
You brought to life a lot of really interesting and brand new characters into this universe. Thrawn, Pelion, Talon Karrde, Mara Jade, and I mean, what were some of the inspirations you had for kind of their different personalities and how they would interact with the others? Like, how did that come about?
For me, when I mentioned that I start with the outline and start with the storyline, typically, the characters start out as essentially cardboard cutouts. Okay, we need a villain. We'll call him Grand Admiral Thrawn. we need a kind of a foil for Luke or somebody he'll be working with, call her Mara Jade. And as I develop the storyline and work out the details, the characters start fleshing out as well. They start, okay, for this plot point to work, Mara has to have this aspect to her personality.
Right.
For this, if I'm going to tie this into the rescue of Han in Return of the Jedi, I want Mara there. Why is she there? Because she's there to kill Luke. Why? Why did
she not succeed?
Well, why did she not succeed? Why did the Emperor would want Luke killed because of Vader's offer to him at the end of Empire Strikes Back? How do we keep Vader from knowing this is in the works? Well, she is going to be off book as the Emperor's hand. She's not in the chain of command. In order to possibly kill Luke, she has to have force powers. So you see how then she comes about. But she's not a Sith. She's not a Dark Jedi. Why is she not that? Well, because of this and that. So the characters will flesh out, and by the time I'm actually starting to write, I have a pretty good idea who and what everybody is.
Okay. Well, I like that. That's a good way to work, because I'm kind of in that same boat with, and I think a lot of fan fiction authors are as well, when they're bringing in original characters or OCs into a story that's already got well-established characters. So that, I think that's a good, handy thing to have for any fan fiction authors out there, because we do have a segment where we dub fan fiction on the show and do silly voices and stuff. And we find some really good ones, and we find a lot of really bad ones too. And I just think that with one of the main things I want to pull across with this interview is just trying to have some advice for those people who, at this time it may just be fan fiction, but this is something that they love doing and maybe they want to actually do for the rest of their lives. And that is probably the best thing I could pull out of this, is probably giving people advice and encouragement through this interview that they would like to have made.
My advice for wannabe writers is keep writing. A lot of people who want to write discover how much work it is, and they give up. If you really want to do it, keep at it. Keep working on developing your voice. Read to find out what you like about other authors, what you don't like. Learn how to incorporate the former and avoid the latter. Keep at it. Finish your stories. Don't get midway through and abandon them. Finish them.
Those are on the
send them out. Start the next one. And above all, have fun, because it should be fun. Even while it's work, it should be satisfying and fun. Your advice?
Yeah. Oh, hi. I'm staring up into space. I'm sorry. I'm tired.
Oh, it's okay. My next
I was
question
late
is going
with
to
my roommate last night.
My next question is going to be out of the blue and
Okay.
interesting. So, well, I don't know if it's interesting. Interesting to me. So.
I mean, you pretty much covered it. You keep reading and you keep writing, and every single thing you finish levels you up as a writer. And it's you get a little mushroom, and it's great. No, I think I finished 5 full-length projects before the one I actually sold, and they say that there's a million crappy words you got to get out of the way. I got at least a million crappy words did I produce before you kind of sort of hit your stride. But you read things that are better than you by people who are smarter than you. Hang out with people who know what they're doing better than you do, and learn. That's really all I can think of.
It has been said that
absorb through mitosis.
Osmosis,
yes.
it has been said when it profits you more to speak than to listen, it's time to change your company.
Yeah.
Interviews don't count.
No, interviews don't count. No, not at all. No. Keep listening, people. Or watching at this point. So, there's an interesting TV show that's been out there for a couple of years that I was curious if you guys had checked out, called Castle.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a writer vest. My husband ordered it. It's the same make and model as the one. It doesn't have the Kevlar plates in it. But my husband special ordered it and gave it to me for Christmas a couple years ago.
I was wondering what you guys actually thought, like from an author's perspective.
Castle is fun.
That sure would be nice if we all made so much money that we could live in these pre-war brownstones in,
Oh, yeah.
in New York.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a delight. I think it gives people some unrealistic expectations.
About writers. I was like,
How many times has he actually been shown writing on that show?
And the first season they actually
A
did
handful
a
of
lot
times.
of times.
Yeah.
the closing would be with his daughter or
Yeah,
his
just
mother,
sitting around.
and you would see him at work.
Yeah.
At least it's like
And then for season 2, it was just kind of in the
Yeah,
like
he's mostly a
glimpsy
pretend
intro
cop
that they
as far as I
did.
can tell.
it's like you want to see the guy put a new magazine into the autoloader at least once during the gunfight. If you see him do it once, you know that they know it's not an infinite repeater.
Yeah.
Right.
If we watch Castle typing away at a new book every once in a while, that's good
Yeah,
enough.
just that said, the season opener this last year, it was a two-parter where oh, he's poisoned, he's got for God's sake. And I did a little half-hearted tweet. I'd had a couple of drinks, I'm not gonna lie. My husband and I like to sit around and drink and watch primetime.
No, that's fine.
Right, and I said something to the effect of, at what point do we go ahead and admit that like the shark is in the rearview mirror of this show by at least a season? And so many people hopped on me that I just deleted it because I didn't feel like dealing with it. I was like, no, I love Nathan Fillion. I like the show. I think it's great. I have a writer vest that I will bust out for conventions, but I don't. Well, it's like anything else. It's a long. There are challenges to running something that long. Nobody knew how many seasons that show had in it.
Right.
And I don't think that I have the personality type or the creative stamina or whatever to write for TV. That's not something that I have nothing
It's a
but respect
whole
for people who
different-
do.
Yeah, it's a whole different
I'm
animal.
friends with a number of people who do and have, and I'm like, all hail. I couldn't do it. But so you're gonna have your ups and downs, and it's like I said about Terry Pratchett. He's another. I love Terry Pratchett. I think he's the storyteller of our time. And a weak Terry Pratchett book is probably stronger than almost anything else I'm gonna pick up off the shelf. So even when it's uneven, I still think it's a pretty good show. But it's fine.
So to end this off, so both of you would appreciate having a cameo on Castle.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, 'cause-
Especially,
especially at the poker table.
The
Yes.
poker table.
especially since at this last year's was it Run for the Force for the Course? It's a charity run down, I think the California coast or something.
like that.
Molly Quinn, his
the
daughter
daughter.
on Castle,
Mhm.
was running as Mara Jade.
Aww.
Yes.
Yes, and considering they've had like the little lightsaber duels and how
Yes.
geeky the family is,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yes, how could they not?
And he had a sword fight in this last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
If
know.
recall.
Yeah.
I was all excited. I'm like, oh, they're finally gonna let him do something. Because usually he's at the back of everything in the vest, and nobody will let him have a gun, and nobody will let him in first. And if he stumbles into the action,
And he gets to
it's
have
because
like an
he stumbled into the
1800 sword
action.
fight.
I
So there
know,
you
and
go.
I was like, yay! I'm so happy for you.
So thank you guys so much. Thank you,
Thanks for having
audience,
me.
for checking out Around the Guild.